You unlock this door with the key of imagination. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of sound. A dimension of sight. A dimension of mind. You're moving into a land of both shadow and substance, of things and ideas. You've just crossed over into the Twilight Zone.
Welcome, travelers, to the Twilight Zone. I'm Jen.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Hyde.
And we're
The
Time
Travel
Trio in the Twilight Zone. As you might have guessed, we are doing the Twilight Zone today.
Which,
It's Hyde's pick.
yeah, I'm super excited about.
Or mine?
Wait, no,
I don't know.
Wait, yeah.
Oh, was it yours?
Yeah, I guess
Wait.
so.
Yeah,
picked time-
because I did time back.
You did time
Yeah,
minutes,
okay.
right? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I
Sorry.
chose
And then
this.
I was thinking, wait, no, I didn't.
Someone named Matt chose this.
Yeah.
What?
Yes.
Yes. No, this is
Sorry.
Matt's choice. Which I'm very excited about because,
Yeah.
it's a good choice, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, well, it was a democratic choice.
Yeah.
But yeah, for the sake of this, I went through and I kind of chose the episodes that we did today.
Mhm.
But we are doing the original Twilight Zone series, and we chose 2 episodes in particular from that original series run.
The first one we'll talk about is Walking Distance from Season 1, Episode 5. And the second episode we'll talk about is No Time Like the Past, which is Season 4, Episode 10.
Yeah.
So we're very excited. We're all big fans. If you've ever watched Twilight Zone, so many episodes have inspired other TV shows and films and just literally everything. It's so original for its time.
Yeah, they definitely ran the gamut of just weird ideas and concepts and so many different things that you don't think about, but oh yeah, that's actually this idea that we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
it's that movie totally ripped off this Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah.
Right.
Even if you just look at the descriptions without seeing the episodes, you can kind of find those, and there's a lot of them.
It's also, there's so many shows that probably wouldn't exist. Much like there are a lot of shows that wouldn't be the same or wouldn't exist if it were not for Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Mm-hmm.
Twilight Zone is very similar in that nature. There'd be no X-Files.
Mm-hmm.
There would be no, most of our science fiction shows would probably not exist had it not been for the Twilight Zone.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So, those who don't know, the description for the Twilight Zone series says, ordinary people find themselves in extraordinarily astounding situations, which they each try to solve in a remarkable manner. And so, it's created by Rod Serling, and he just did it all.
Pretty much. He wrote
Yeah,
most
this
of
is
the
his
episodes.
Yeah, it's his thing, and it's great, and I honestly think he's a genius, to be honest. I think his ideas and just this show came out 1959 to 1964 and was so far ahead. I mean, I feel like I'm going to keep saying this, but it's so far ahead of its time.
Yeah.
For the stories that they told and, just the way that they told them too was sometimes it's heavy-handed, sometimes it's more subtle, but they all kind of are about something. It's not just aliens for the sake of aliens to be
Right.
dramatic. It's quality episodes.
Yeah.
I'm not saying there aren't bad ones too, because there definitely are, but the majority of them, you can find, more horror type episodes or more sci-fi type episodes, and it's not just one thing. It kind of creates its own box.
Yeah, it's sci-fi, but also sometimes supernatural, and sometimes just people stories. Sometimes there's no supernatural element. It's just people being just human nature,
Right.
Yeah, for sure. So there's quite a few time travel episodes, and the cool thing about this show, there's different ways that they can use time travel, because it's not, it's not one big story arc over a season. It's per episode. It's its own enclosed story.
Yeah, self-contained rules
Yeah.
and all that stuff.
So each episode is different than the last, and they don't, cross over or anything. So that gives this show the ability to explore different ways to use time travel and different themes that are involved with that. So we only picked 2 episodes, but there is a large amount if you want to kind of, dig and find more of those. They're definitely out there.
Yeah, I think I kind of at least 10 that have to do with specifically with people either time traveling or some weird time thing. I think there's maybe more that involves stopping time and all that stuff, but There are like 10, but there are the same kind of concepts used a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's another story where some guy visits his childhood again or something like that. There's ways that they use the same kind of concepts, but they have different spins on them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's at least 10 different like time travel-ish episodes.
Yeah, for sure. So let's get into the first one, which is Walking Distance. And that one, as I mentioned, is from season 1. The description says, a man travels back in time to his childhood, arriving just a few miles away from his native town.
Which is called Homewood.
Homewood. And funny enough, did you realize
Yes,
in the second one it's called
Homeville.
Homeville?
Yeah, and also the teacher in the second one, his last name is Sloan, and this guy is Martin Sloan.
Yeah.
So I was like,
Oh.
I know, I thought that was
I
a
did not
weird
catch that.
we
coincidence.
use the same name.
One of them is
You're getting-
connected.
I mean,
You're getting lazy, Sterling. It was
like
I
156
know.
episodes of this show.
Well,
Like, give him a fucking break.
I like this, man. Matt's going for Rod Stewart.
I'd like to see Modern Family do that many original episodes.
I know, right?
That are just family members yelling at each other.
Taking him to task.
Yeah.
Taking the test. We're gonna get letters. You're gonna be
You
like,
just-
how dare you say that about Rod Sterling, man?
I'm just kidding.
I'll write you a letter
Yeah.
saying how dare you
I
say that about
I
Rod
kid because I
Serling.
love.
You kid because they love.
I wish I could meet him and just, like, at this time, too. Just, like, sit in his writer's room with him and just
Yeah.
Probably a lot of cigarettes.
learn.
This is a huge
For sure.
diversion, but like the ride in the old ride in Disneyland.
Yeah.
The actor that they got to play him looks so much like him and sounds so much like him. It's like remarkable.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
hmm Well, you can't find any more, though, so sorry
Yeah.
for that tea.
I know. I forgot.
They changed it to Guardians.
No.
R.I.P. Twilight Zone, which was a better ride than the Guardians one. By the way, I'm just gonna say it.
Yeah, now you'll get
I
letters.
think Twilight Zone Tower of Terror is better than Escape of whatever Guardians.
Escape from the prison, whatever.
That stupid 3D bullshit is. Anyway, Twilight Zone. So this episode, I've seen a large chunk of Twilight Zone episodes, but I definitely have not seen all of them. But I have never seen this, so this was either of them actually, and they were all new to me.
Mm-hmm.
Have either of you guys seen this one before?
Oh, I've seen it a couple times. This is probably my second or third time seeing the episode. Twilight Zone used to come on local TV all the time growing up. So we would watch that and like the Andy Griffin Show and all this other jazz during the summer. So it came on late night. But yeah, no, I remember this episode. I remember when I saw it, which was probably in middle school, like the first time I ever saw it. It definitely stuck with me.
Yeah, I didn't see this one, or I may have. I just don't remember it. I watch like the marathons, like on some holidays with my friend Billy, and like you just watch hours of it. So it takes me to, like actually having to like watch the episode to see if I've seen it before. But this one didn't jog any memories for me, and neither did the other one. So they're both new to me too. But I've seen like the biggest ones, like the William Shatner episode. I've seen that, I know, and yeah. So I have memories like concrete of a few episodes, but definitely not these.
Yeah. So I liked this one. It was the time travel in it is very subtle. I will definitely say it's like the most subtle use we will probably ever see in anything that we do for this podcast. But I didn't mind it. It's not about so much the time travel itself. It's more about his tale of trying to relive his childhood and then kind of realizing that you can't. Pretty much. A lot of the episodes are moral tales, and they kind of are depressing a little bit.
Yeah.
They're not always uplifting. People learn a lesson, and it's kind of more grounded in reality versus like winning something, so to speak.
Yeah.
And this one is definitely not an exception.
Yeah, I mean, at least this one's like bittersweet. It wasn't he wasn't punished for it. I mean, I guess he has a limp now, but we'll get into that. But yeah, with this time travel, like with the Twilight Zone concept, you don't really need a mechanism. The fact that he walks from this gas station pretty much to the past, you believe it because he walks into the Twilight Zone. He's like, it's being, it's kind of outside of the realm of reality, really, It's a fifth dimension.
That's one thing I really like about this show. It does a really great job of kind of blending reality with the fantasy and making the fantasy more real, so to speak, that like it's believable. It's not, it's Twilight Zone or whatever, but you're not like in some, Marvel movie where there's magic and, wizards and whatever. it's not like that. It's real people in real places with real situations. There just happens to be like these other almost mystical elements to it that we don't really ever see. I mean, at least in this one, he doesn't like push a button and then suddenly is in the past.
He just walks.
He just kind of was. I like to see it in this show as like the powers that be kind of control and manipulate situations, and so they decided to send him back to his past.
Maybe Rod Serling himself.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Maybe he's like
he
a
is the
watcher.
power that be. He's a watcher. Okay,
The Watcher.
That checks out. So, right. So the main guy, his name is Martin,
Sloan,
and he's Martin Sloan. He's kind of a dick.
He's a marketing executive, which automatically translates into like total a-hole.
Yeah,
he works in
New York.
media.
Yeah, from New York. That's right.
Yeah.
He's like
Keyword.
media manager for something, some marketing, something. They said the word media a few times, and it like caught my attention.
Yeah,
it's just funny because like that's who these people in Twilight Zone would be working with quite a bit. So it's like they're almost like talking like, you
kind
guys,
of like punching them in the shoulder, like, huh? And so he goes back to his hometown, and it happens to be when the younger version of him is 11 years old, but he is also there. So there is a duplicate of him, I guess is the easiest way to explain that. There's an older version and a younger version. I really enjoyed the bits of him with his parents.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought that was definitely the most interesting aspect of the episode. I wanted to like learn more about like what happened to his parents. Like, did they split up? Is that what he was talking about? Or like,
he says like, my mom's. She's like,
what
Mom,
is she
you're still here.
doing here? Yeah. So things like that, the subtlety of the writing in this show is really what kind of elevates it over maybe something similar but lesser.
Right. And this is, I think, it's one of the stronger episodes of the Twilight Zone, mainly because, yes, he does time travel, but it's a very grounded episode. Minus the time travel, it's really just a human drama piece. Where this guy's trying to relive, he's trying to grab something that everyone, I think, can relate to the older and older they get. It's like that sweet moment where you feel like life was perfect, or that life was ideal.
Right. And his whole thing is like, he wants to tell his younger self to appreciate that time in his life and to really enjoy it. But, of course, the whole thing is he never really... He kind of does when the boy's like, he looks like he's kind of passed out, but he does like say it, but it was more kind of for himself as an older version of him to hear versus the younger version.
Yeah. And especially like the stuff with his dad, obviously that's what kind of like his at home is when like his dad believes him because he finds his wallet and sees all of his evidence and his stuff in the future. Like he sees his evidence and he's, I believe you, but like you this doesn't belong to you. This is there can't be two of you here.
Right.
Like this is his. This isn't yours anymore. And like look towards the future, and that's like obviously the point of it. But it was cool to like see that exchange between them because he's like he believes him and he's like no, just go back.
Yeah, I like what he said that it's like you only get one chance at this time at a certain time in your life. Don't make the younger version of you have to share it with the older version of you. That's not fair. I really liked that. And I enjoyed that relationship of him with his dad, and the conversations they had was enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, it was interesting too because when his younger self fell and hurt his leg, immediately he reacted to it. He immediately felt the change in the past.
Right.
So that was. I'm glad you brought that up. That was an interesting thing that is very different than the other episode we're going to talk about. Is that the past can change here?
Right. There's no fatalism here.
Yeah. So. Yes, whatever happened, but interfering can cause a ripple effect of change somehow.
Right.
Like in the circumstances with his leg. So I think it was also kind of like maybe his power that be, his punishment, power that be like almost kicking him in the leg, like in a literal sense of like, hey, what are you doing here? Come on, you've like seen enough. You've gotten your taste. Time to go.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing.
And I like that once it happens, he wasn't like, what? He just accepted it. He was like, my leg is just, I have a bum leg now. This is just how it is.
Right. So, man, you should get a cane because that's a really bad leg. He has a really bad limp. Dude, you should get a cane.
Yeah. If it's been 25 years and you're still limping from it, like, ooh.
And he had to walk a mile back to the gas station with it.
Yeah, that's true. So he goes into this drugstore. is kind of where I'd say kind of he walks through the door, and that's when the time exchange, I would call it, happens.
The milkshake place,
right?
Or the soda place, whatever.
It's called a drugstore.
Oh, okay.
And so when he goes in the first time, it kind of takes him a minute, but it was interesting kind of seeing when he kind of knew that he was in the past.
Right. We're talking about, was it Mr. Wilson, I think?
Yeah.
Well, but he didn't notice that. What actually hit it home was when we saw the car. And I was like, you just talked to your parents.
Yeah.
And you saw yourself as a child, and it took you the car from 1934 to realize you're in the past.
It was weird how they decided to kind of, make him see that. But I also think maybe it goes with his personality as a character, that he's this, executive at a marketing place, and he's like tough guy, and he doesn't like that kind of fantasy. He doesn't seem like someone who plays video games on the weekend.
Right.
I mean, obviously it's like 1960, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know
that
what you
kind
mean.
of thing.
He wouldn't actually accept that something supernatural is happening. He would be
Right.
more likely to say, "Man, that family looks a lot like my family used to look like," before he accepted
That's
Right.
true, yeah.
something supernatural was happening.
Right, which is cool because a lot of the movies and stuff that we do for this podcast, a lot of times we see people just kind of either instantaneously believe that they've time traveled, or like it doesn't take that much for them to kind of accept it, because the story itself needs that character to accept it. But in this case, they kind of gave it a little bit of room to breathe, and I thought that was nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's kind of how the time travel works. The rules, there really aren't rules.
Yeah, he can't control it.
He can't control it. He kind of does. He's gonna do what he's gonna do, and when the quote unquote power that be decides he's done, or when he's learned his lesson, I guess I should say, and he, that's when he goes back to his present day, and then he drives away and leaves, and kind of, sees hometown in his rearview mirror.
Yeah.
Homewood, whatever it's
Yeah.
Too many home location names. So consequences, we kind of talked about the leg injury. Obviously, there isn't really any science for us to kind of dissect with this.
I know. Twilight Zone, it is this fifth-dimensional powers that be world changing thing that kind of happens to him, so.
Right. And so the time travel is fairly relevant to the story. It's, sends him back in time so he can learn the lesson he needs to learn, which is, you're trying to go home again, but you can't. And it's kind of just a wish that, as you said, a lot of older people have. But you can also find that same joy in present day if you look ahead instead of behind.
Yeah, and don't look back at the past as being a child. Like, you can still kind of enjoy those things as an adult still, I thought it was funny that, like, he said he was 36. He looks like he's mid-40s, like, late, like, like not 30, like, 36, wow.
He's got some city miles.
City miles.
Will Smith would put it in Men in Black.
Yeah.
Got some city miles on it.
I love
Exactly.
Men in Black. There was definitely some vibes of, and since you brought up Men in Black, is a little bit of Men in Black 3 kind of vibes going on.
There is a little bit.
Where's
kind
my
of visiting your younger self
Where's
and that
your
whole
dad?
thing.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm just saying.
No, you're right. Who knows if that maybe influenced the ending of Men in Black 3 a little bit.
It could have.
Yeah.
And of course, I really love the title of this, which is Walking Distance, because in a literal sense, it's like, in the beginning of the episode, it says, it's walking distance to get to it's like a mile to walk to that town.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just a really nicely worded title. It's just kind of,
Yeah, when you hear it in the episode, you're like, oh, yeah, okay, I see.
Mm-hmm.
I guess one of my other notes is that when he's chasing his younger self at the carousel, he yells, "I won't hurt you!" Like, that's the last thing you want to tell to a child when you're chasing them down. Don't run! I won't hurt you!
He's also, the one thing that kind of bothered me is, like, very nitpicky petty, but, like, why wouldn't he run the other direction on the carousel? He would go much faster.
Yep.
He, like, goes towards, like, if the carousel's spinning clockwise, he runs clockwise.
Yeah, that's
going
true.
counterclockwise, you go much faster. I don't know.
He's just like, hey.
I'm more of a thinker than the VP of marketing media.
Yeah.
He got there by saying yes to a lot of things.
Or no to a lot of things.
True.
You could say. Cool. Okay. That's kind of pretty much all there was that I had to say about it.
Would you guys want to experience this time travel?
Not. I mean, my childhood was like fine, but I don't like cherish it like he did his.
Yeah, I don't necessarily cherish it, but there is that appeal of like being able to give yourself give your younger self advice is
Right.
kind of appealing. You know, not sure if they would believe you, but, you know, kind of planting the seed. That is appealing to me a little bit, but it's also like, if I did that, though, I might not be who I am now.
Yeah.
So,
Right, exactly. That's
kind of
the
weigh
tough-
the pros and cons.
Yeah.
Would you?
I don't think so. I mean, if I could do it and observe without actually causing something and then just walk back, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, if I could just see, like, oh, yeah, that's what it looked like when I was, like, younger.
Yeah, just like kind of like viscerally remember things instead of like a foggy memory of it.
Right.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
other than
There's some
that,
appeal to
yeah.
that.
I would not talk to my younger self and my parents.
I know. Yeah, I mean, like obviously, I would have the chance to like talk to my dad again, which would be great. But when I was a kid, when I was like 10 or 11, I was playing video games and using the internet, so not much has changed.
You literally do
I mean,
literally the same thing.
Yeah,
every
I was
day.
probably playing GoldenEye, and you know that's
Yeah.
not much has changed.
Yep. You're still 12. So I think we'll just do a show rating as a whole at the end of the episode.
Yeah,
Makes more
that
sense.
sounds good.
Because these episodes are kind of similar that we're covering. So, okay. So let's move on to the next one, which is No Time Like the Past, which is another title I love, by the way. Like pretty much all of the titles of these episodes in Twilight Zone, maybe not all of them, but so many of them are like, that's the kind of title I really love.
Like
It's
they nail them
it's-
a lot.
Yeah. It's like interesting. It's not just like Friends, like the one where Joey eats cake. It's like, fuck off, really?
But I think,
It's just
but
lazy.
to be fair to Friends is making fun of the sitcom, like
Yes,
format,
yes.
where they're always like, it's the one where they do this because like
No,
it's-
it's that format that they used for that, the one where, etc.
right.
Yes, I agree. That is like a
Commentary.
It's
But I know
a-
what you're saying.
It's a stab, but I just mean like that was just the first example that came to mind. But it's just like the dinner or like
Right.
the grocery store, like stupid. Anyway,
No, I know what you're saying. I was watching an episode the other day, and the episode literally called Ultimatum. And I'm like,
exactly.
all right.
It's just laziness.
Well,
It's laziness.
not TV Guide not being the be all end all of how you how you watch an episode has really changed how people have to describe TV shows and episodes, and like, because when you were like, am I going to watch this episode tonight? And you saw something called No Time Like the Past, like, you're like, oh, that sounds interesting.
Right.
It's like, because you're like, I remember, even as a kid, still getting TV Guide and having to look
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
flip and like say like, oh, it's going to be a new, because they would tell you new episode or rerun. So
Mhm.
you knew if TGI Fridays on ABC, and then you would know like, oh my gosh, this episode of Boy Meets World is going to happen. Like, you're like, it'd be something, you're like,
Yeah.
oh, Corey must like do something with Topanga otherwise, blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, what? I gotta watch tonight.
Yeah, I know.
Uh-huh.
God, I forgot about the whole time, the whole like the TV guide of it all. You know,
Yes.
we used to, obviously we used to get them, but yeah,
Yeah, and just even like after the physical copies of TV Guide, when it was TV Guide channel,
Yeah.
you'd have to like wait for it to scroll all the way through in
I
order
know.
to like find the channel you wanted to see.
Yeah.
Wow. And they had like, and then at one point, it used to be like full screen, and then at one point they like sold
Yeah,
out,
that
and it was
video.
like a quarter of the screen was like what's on, and then the top was like an advertisement, like nonstop.
Right, and
Yeah.
like now TV Guide is literally like just interviews and like promos and discussing TV shows.
Mm-hmm.
But you gotta
Which
give it
makes
to
sense.
because you gotta give it to TV Guide, man. They've been around forever.
They're still around.
They're
That's
still around
crazy.
our friend
Yeah, our
Lindsay
friend works there.
Yeah, and I mean, I watch hers. I still watch TV Guide. Now that I think about it, oh my gosh, I've been watching TV Guide since I could read. Essentially,
That's crazy.
I've been like, involved with TV Guide. That's so weird. Just had a revelation about my life,
yeah,
Yeah, right.
and I didn't have to go back in time to do so.
Yeah.
There you go. See,
short walking distance for you.
so this title though. So No Time Like the Past. The saying is really No Time Like the Present.
Mhm.
Is the actual like, that's the real saying. And so, but it's so fitting for this
Yeah.
episode. I mean, it's just like. Just fucking nails it because it's literally that's what this episode is, where you're trying to go back to the past and change things, and then in the end, similarly to the other one, you kind of realize there is no time like the present.
Yeah,
That's the
the past isn't meant for you.
It's just fucking genius.
To kick us off in this episode, I actually cut out the Rod clip because I think it's a fun little explanation that he gives at the beginning.
Cool.
Exit one Paul Driscoll, a creature of the 20th century. He puts to a test a complicated theorem of space-time continuum. But he goes a step further, or tries to. Shortly, he will seek out 3 moments of the past in a desperate attempt to alter the present. One of the odd and fanciful functions in a shadowland known as the Twilight Zone.
I love that. Odd and fanciful functions. What a phrase.
They're just, he always does it so well. Like, the words he uses, the words he chooses, and like the way he says them. It's just so good.
I love him. I've never seen this episode either. Have you seen this one?
I can't remember seeing it prior to today.
I definitely have not, yeah.
Yeah, but wow, what an episode. I'm so glad that we watched this. Just for like my own life was just a really enjoyable episode.
This one's good because he has a time machine. Like, he's deliberately doing this, and and there's elements that we see now in movies where, like, he tries to change things, but he doesn't, ends up, like, causing them. That's so used in, like, a lot of the plots we see. And, like, here it is in 1963.
Yeah, it's great. And he wants to, I feel like oftentimes people who go back or forward in time are flawed people who need to learn how to be less flawed or not flawed for a certain reason. But he's someone actually who just is very passionate about how he wants to live in a better world where bombs and war isn't as prominent as it is.
Right, he has noble intentions.
Right. He's not a bad guy, and we never really see him be a bad guy. Even when he tries to prevent the fire at the end, he still, like, does it for honorable reasons. He doesn't want these kids to burn, even though he knows it's probably not going to do any good. He still wants to try. So I liked that about it. It made it, because it wasn't a full movie, I didn't mind. I think if it was like 2 hours of this like honorable, noble guy always doing, what's right, would get a little old.
Right.
But it was, because it's only like 50 minutes in this episode, I didn't have a problem with it. And he goes back to a lot of different time periods, so he's not just in 1881, which I think easily it could have been that.
Yeah, and also halfway through, he changes his goal. He's like, I try to help things out. I'm just gonna live in the past. He's wrestling with, like, can I do it? Should I do it? And he doesn't do it to, like, impress the girl. He's like, no, I don't want to hurt these kids.
Right.
Which a lesser writer would have done that. Yeah. I think.
He evolves enough the woman. I mean, they have, like, some tension there, but even he kind of, like, pushes away, like, hey, like, this
and he never tells her.
Right, he never tells her.
Yeah, he doesn't do it for her. He does it for the good of mankind, more or less.
I think I felt that I was surprised that he didn't tell her, because they built it to the way that, well, if anyone was going to believe him, if he told them the truth, it would probably be her. And she probably would have gotten those kids out of the building. But he kind of...
He's like, you won't believe it, and just leaves it at that.
He kind of just either assumes or has decided to not do that.
Well, yeah, I think because it's gone so disastrous the last few times, I think he was kind of thinking if he tried to prevent it, if he tried to tell her, then it would make it worse somehow.
Yeah.
Or would just somehow, like, not change anyway. So it was like, what's the point?
Yeah, I liked... This whole episode was really about trying to change the past to make a better future. And a lot of Twilight Zone episodes are very war-centric or about war or things that kind of relate there. Maybe not directly. This one is more direct about it. But I like the idea of, can you change the past? That's, like, as far as time travel themes go, that one is one I really enjoy. Right. So that's why I think I really liked this episode.
Yeah, I mean, in this episode, it's more explicit, the time travel, than the last one, where you just, like, the Twilight Zone forces itself on them.
Yeah.
He actually chooses to time travel, and they have a time machine. Right. I have some problems on how it all works.
Yeah, it's a little foggy.
Literally,
I think purposely, but yes, Matt, please.
Well, he instantly vanishes in the past when he wants to move around, but how does he control it in the past? Yeah. Like, we never see him arrive, so maybe he has some mechanism to do it, but in Japan, when he, like, walked out, the nuke went off, like, literally a minute later after he walked out the room, and he wasn't there. So, like how does he just vanish? And, like how does he control when he leaves?
I kind of made the assumption that it was he could control it mentally somehow, because how else would he decide where and when to go.
Okay.
Right.
It didn't seem like, I mean, I could be wrong, I don't know, but it didn't seem like someone was typing in coordinates or something. It kind of seemed like he closed his eyes and thought, I want to go there specifically at that time during this event, and then he would be there.
Yeah.
And then either when the event happened or when he wanted to leave, he would just leave.
Okay, so maybe
That's what I assumed.
So the way the machine worked is that he was on this like pedestal pretty much under a spotlight, and there are like lights and wires and stuff. But there was a picture of him that was getting into focus, and then his partner flipped the switch, and that's when he left. So maybe that machine imbued him with the power to do that.
Yeah.
Like when it's in focus, that means his mind is now in focus to do this.
Yeah.
So okay,
That seems,
I like that.
That seems like it could.
And it makes sense.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
At least in this world's universe.
Right,
Yes.
in the Twilight Zone, it makes sense.
So, as it explained in the clip, the first time he has 3 different attempts to go back in time to alter events in order to ideally cause a chain reaction so that bombs are not as prominent
Yeah,
in his present day.
prevent World War II with Hitler, prevent World War I with Lusitania,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff.
And the third one is trying to find it in my notes.
Japan, Hitler,
Hiroshima, yeah.
and the ship.
Yeah. And so none of them work. He tries, I wouldn't say he tries that hard, but he does try a little bit to change things. And then, the gun doesn't go off, or someone interrupts him, or they just don't believe him, and then it happens, that kind of thing. So,
I mean, he gave himself like 5 minutes to change those things. It's like, give yourself a week.
And he tells one person, or like 1 or 2 people, like, hey, there's like, hey, Hitler, I gotta go kill Hitler, or like, hey, I'm gonna you should get out of this town. Like, what?
I'm also like, just don't let that maid into your room. Like, I don't understand. She was like really annoying. But, at first it seemed like, oh, maybe he only has a certain amount of time. But then later, when he goes back to 1881, he can be there as long as he wants.
Yeah.
Right.
And goes back to his present day, and it's like, it seemed like he hadn't been gone very long because his friend made a comment. Like, we know he was in 1881 for at least a few days.
Yeah.
Right.
But when he came back to where the time machine was, his friend was like, oh, that was quick. He made a comment.
Yeah.
So,
well, speaking of his friend, I actually pulled a clip of, this is before he went to Indiana in 1881. This is him talking about what he's trying to do now after resolving to not change anything.
right.
I'm going back not to change anything, but to become a part of it. A world of band concerts and summer nights on front porches. A world that never heard of an atomic bomb, or world wars, or germ warfare, or anything else. That's where I'm going, Harvey.
All right. But remember this, Paul. Everything is cause and effect. Everything. You go back in time to this Homeville, and you inadvertently change one event, alter it minutely, and you might start a chain reaction beyond anything that we can even imagine.
But I'm going back there to live, not to change anything.
That really just sums up pretty much the whole episode. But I feel like I say this every time we kind of come across it, but I love the cause and effect of time travel. I think it's the most interesting concept to it, honestly. And so he keeps having to learn over and over again that you cannot change the past. So in that sense, as I mentioned before, this episode is different than Walking Distance, where he did cause even a small change like his leg, it did still change the past.
Right.
In this one, no matter what he does, it's like we use this example a lot.
Yeah.
In
The pebble
X-Men
in the
Days of
stream.
Future Past, there's a clip where they talk about how you can throw a pebble in a stream and it might, alter it for a moment.
Like a ripple,
but the river itself will still course correct around it and continue flowing in the same direction.
Right.
This is that as well. So he goes to 1881. He wants to he seems like he really just wants to live in a better world. That's kind of what he was talking about. He doesn't want to be surrounded by thoughts of war and violence and destruction. But then he gets there and realizes it's everywhere. It's always everywhere.
Yeah.
It's, which maybe is also a little heavy-handed. I don't necessarily agree that everywhere you go, people are always going to be talking about war. But, essentially you can find it if you're trying to not look for it, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like, he's trying to avoid it, and so he finds it even more.
Yeah, I mean, 1881, obviously, it's just after the Civil War. Like, Abby, she lost her, parents and family, or her dad and her brothers in it. So, the people there are still, like war is still like present on their mind. And when you had the political discussion at dinner table with the banker guy, this guy's spouting off all like, spreading America.
Such a dick.
Yeah, and it's like, that's 1881, but like that could also just be in the 40s or 50s. Like that
could be current.
Yeah,
like,
it could be today.
It's
literally.
Which is, I mean, again, really good writing because it shows that you can't escape it. There's like these themes, these issues are inescapable, which is why I like the message of the, it would have been very easy for a lot of reasons to have been like, either he changes it, or even if you wanted to keep the idea that you couldn't change the past, then be like, there's nothing you can do, and it's just going to keep happening like this forever. But there is a kind of a positive spin taken on the whole idea. It's like, well, you can't change the past, but you can change the future. Like, what you're doing right now is affecting the future.
Right.
So, like, just do something now. Like, stop obsessing over something that's already happened.
It's not his. It's not his to have anymore,
Right. It's the same as the theme from Walking Distance.
Right.
Don't focus so much on the past, focus on the future.
Yeah, I think he said it to Abby, I think, or to Harvey, whatever. But he says he knows about too many tomorrows.
Yeah.
And that the past is sacred. I thought that was a nice way to like poetically say it.
Yeah, I agree. I liked that too. I liked him struggling with whether or not he was going to interfere. At first it was the Garfield assassination and then, or the gun shot.
Yeah.
It wasn't an assassination because he didn't die right away. And then later with the fire was, you can also kind of see it coming when you're watching it too. You're like, how in the world is like this cart going to just be like a runaway cart that's going to fling,
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, of course, because he tries to do it, and then it inadvertently causes it.
Yeah.
But like, if he wasn't... So, here's what I wanted to ask was, so does that mean he always went back there?
I think it does. I
think it does.
In this episode, it does.
I think, in this episode, he's the reason.
Because you could say, well, maybe it's just course correcting because it would have happened whether or not he was there.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
So that's kind of why I wanted to pose that
question. But now he's the cause of it. So even if before he was not the cause, he's now the cause. It's still the same event still happened.
Right, but was he always the cause? Was he always in the
past?
That's the question.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think that he was, but it doesn't. He doesn't have to be because, like you said, it could be something else that caused it.
Well, if you can't change the past, I would think it makes sense that he always went back in time to make these attempts. He always did this. He always went to 1881, and because the timeline itself never changed.
Yeah.
Him being there would have been a change if it didn't happen before. And so that alone would have been a ripple to create a cause and effect. It did, but it didn't. You know what I mean? Like, he was there and he did cause events, but there are events that always happened. So I would say that he always went back.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think in this case, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm inclined to think that's what happened as well.
Yeah, I would think that's probably Roth's early
because not like he sunk the how do you pronounce that name of it?
Lusitania.
It's not like he sunk it. So it's like he didn't cause all those things to happen. But he certainly didn't stop all those things, but he certainly was there all those times. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, most of the stuff he did not affect. This is the one tiny, in the history of human history, it's a very tiny event that he directly caused. But he always caused.
Yeah, but it was enough to also make him see that he shouldn't be trying to meddle.
Right.
And I think the quote-unquote, as we keep saying, powers that be, that's the lesson they needed him to learn, because he had built this machine and does have this ability, but he needed to realize that he can't use it for that purpose, or really use it at all then in that circumstance, because it doesn't really talk about whether or not he could go to the future, but it sounded like he didn't really want to, so.
Yeah, that was never a thing, yeah.
Yeah. Well, there you go. So consequences, consequences of this, just that you can't change the past, and you will learn a lesson.
Yeah,
that you can't change the past.
Or you'll be the one that caused the thing you're trying to prevent. That's more of a like personal mental toll. Like, oh no, I caused that, so you have the guilt.
Right.
But I mean that's kind of
And that's a theme we see fairly often, I think, in time travel movies. Is that someone tries to change something in time and ends up causing it anyway.
Yeah.
So. Definitely a common theme.
Yeah, I thought it was funny that Garfield popped up again for us as a podcast. He in Time at the Top, she was like, Garfield, he'll get shot, and she's like, what? And then she comes back and was like, see, I told you, like that. It was more of a flippant. It was more. It was more of like a, see, I told you, haha, he got shot. This one was more like, he got shot. It was like different.
Different reactions.
Yeah.
Both also about living in that time period and like thinking like, oh, this would be a better time to live in.
Except in Time at the Top, they do end up
They
staying
get
in the
stuck
past.
there, yeah.
Right.
Well, they choose, they stay there, yeah.
They choose to. Oh God, that movie.
Time at the Top.
Time at the Top.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems like a movie that was a Twilight Zone episode that they remade and made into a crappy TV movie.
Right. I feel like they should remake Time at the Top, but then like make like Miranda Cosgrove like the lead. Like it just seems like a Nickelodeon original movie. It seems destined to become like Nickelodeon original movie that they're gonna make. I know Miranda Cosgrove is probably way too old to be doing a Nickelodeon.
Yeah,
movie.
she's like probably like mid-20s now, at least like that.
I don't have any frame of reference.
Yeah, I only see her as like
iCarly.
Yeah. For sure. Cool. So scientific accuracy of the machine.
Yeah, I mean, it's pure sci-fi.
Yeah.
If we're going with the idea that it imbues him with this like mental ability to control his placement in the space-time continuum, then it's even more like fanciful because there's no like.
It's pretty cool though.
Yeah, I mean it's a cool power to like give yourself, but in terms of like actual physics, it's like pure sci-fi.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And so obviously it's very relevant in this episode.
Right.
He goes back 4 different time periods. So that's always good to have a variety.
Yeah.
Clothes and sets. Anything you guys notice about this one?
I mean, it's funny.
Stood out.
Like in the 60s, everyone's wearing like suits, and like a suit is universal. You can go to like to 1800s, and I mean, it may look different, obviously, in like different kind of cuts. But if you're wearing a suit, you're wearing a suit. No one's wearing like fancy neon jackets, self tying laces. It's just like
yeah, it's more like if you're a woman, it kind of. You have to be more careful about what you're wearing.
True.
I think because like the teacher's dress is very different than like,
the maids.
The maid. Thank you. Yeah, the maid.
True.
Things like that. So, cool. All right. Would you want to experience this time travel?
No.
Have that mental.
You can't change anything, and it would just be a frustrating experience.
Right, but I guess if you really wanted to see the past,
true.
You couldn't change anything. And you couldn't change anything. So maybe if you're cool with that, you don't necessarily have to go to a time,
but you can experience it.
I would say yes. I think that would be a pretty cool ability. You could go, I don't know how far back you could go. It seemed like if there's a picture of it, then and you can visualize it. Maybe that's what it is. If you can visualize being there, then you can go there.
I mean, I agree. I would do this one because it isn't tied to my life. I can choose to go anywhere.
Yeah.
And I don't really know much about history, so I wouldn't know of a fire in a school to prevent. I would just go in the past and be like, oh, what's going on here?
Like blissful ignorance.
Yeah.
Kind of seeing, hey, how were the pyramids really built?
That would be true. That would be dope.
And then they'd be like, why is this, well, in my case, why is this, like, weird white guy standing here watching us build pyramids?
They'd be like, he must be Greek.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any other notes about No Time Like the Past?
I took a lot of notes, but it was more just like, oh, he's doing this, he's going there.
Yeah, I took a lot of notes too, but they were like more relevant than just like, that's a funny comment. But
yeah, I like that he called himself the voice of history in Japan. I thought that was cool.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I don't think I have anything else.
I think the only thing that would be interesting to note about this is all the World War II stuff would essentially be us, at this time period when this was made, it would be like us trying to change stuff that happened in the 90s.
Huh.
Wow, yeah.
Like, you think about perspective, like, we would be, like...
What would we want to change in the
OJ.
90s?
Yeah, OJ. Like, it was OJ! And then, or like...
But who would believe us? That's the thing. There were tons of people who were saying it was OJ, but it didn't make a difference.
I mean, I've seen the documentary and I've seen, like, the American Crime Story. And when you look at the evidence, even knowing what I know now, if I was a juror back in time, I could not convict OJ Simpson based on the evidence provided. Which sucks, but that's how it works.
But in your mind, do you believe that he did it?
Oh, he probably did it. I mean, I'm 90% sure he did it.
Mm-hmm.
But there is enough of reasonable doubt that you can't convict him.
I mean, like, clearly, he's literally a criminal. He went to jail for something else entirely. But I mean, he released a book, right, called If I Did It.
Right, they blocked it because of O.J. Simpson years ago, or someone else. They actually made a law that says you cannot profit off of crime with a tell-all book.
Okay.
It has to be done in a very particular way. It can't be something that you were like.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, you can't do intern crimes. You can't. Profit off of it.
It's like a long con. Even if you get caught, it's like, and then 20 years later, write a book about it. It's like, that was my plan all along. Dude.
Right, get rich.
Yeah. I mean, I also don't think that. Well, I don't know. I mean, now we're talking about OJ, but like, I don't see him as like a criminal mastermind though either.
Right.
That like,
he got
he got
sloppy and got caught.
sloppy, but also like lucky in the sense of like the evidence wasn't overwhelming, as you're saying.
Right.
So.
I mean, there's got to be something in the 90s that we would want to stop. Maybe
we could have a chit chat with Donald Trump.
Yeah.
That's
there you go.
Every time we. I mean, my mind always goes there. Even when we were watching these episodes, I was like, "Yep, I would use this and try and fix the timelines, so we're not living under Donald Trump's rule."
You could save like different people's careers and like taking like Eddie Murphy. Don't do the Adventures of Pluto Nash. Don't do it, Eddie.
But if you said that, would it make him want to do it?
Right, that's the thing. In this world,
yes.
This guy telling me not this movie.
He'd be like, "This guy told me to not do it," and I feel like.
How would you get to Eddie Murphy? How would you get there?
I would fly out to LA
okay,
because I'd have 2018 money, which would be worth a little bit more in the 90s.
Yeah, if we were living in the 90s with the like pay that we have now, we'd be like, woo, rolling in dough.
I could buy a nice house with hardwood floors.
Make some good investments.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's true. Stock market stuff.
Yep.
See,
before the crash, get out of the real estate market before the crash.
Would you play the lottery?
Yeah, probably. Why not?
Yeah.
I mean, that's easy, but
technically, would that be taking money from someone else who originally won it?
Oh, you're right. Mm.
So you would have to live with that guilt, but then you could see.
I could find someone who wasted it.
Right. See the result of like what did that person do with their money? If they created a charity, maybe let them have it. But like if they used it on like NASCAR bets or something.
Yeah. If this was a British movie, we would use it to save Princess Diana from the car.
Yeah, that'd be
good. Yeah.
That's that's a big thing. I'm sure a lot of people in Britain would change.
Yeah, that's true.
That's
true.
That'd be a big one.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I don't know what I would change in the 90s. 90s were an interesting time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay. So we also wanted to mention there's some great Twilight Zone episodes, and if you go to the IMDb page on the right-hand side, it says like the list of the top episodes. So if you're looking to like find some top ones, you can go there. We each picked one favorite that we have, or one that we really like. Doesn't necessarily have to be like our favorite episode of all time.
Notable episodes.
Right. So mine, one of my top ones is called Time Enough at Last, which is season 1, episode 8. This is the episode with, as you like immediately recognize it, when he drops his glasses. So this guy loves to read. He works at like a bank, I think, or something, and they keep yelling at him, and and his wife yells at him. He like basically never has enough time to read, and he accidentally locks himself in the bank vault during a nuclear war, comes out, literally everything's destroyed, but there's books everywhere, and he has his glasses, so he finally sits down. No one's around to disturb him because literally everything is gone.
Yep. Time enough at last.
And he has time enough at last to read, and then he drops his glasses and they break, and so he can't see.
There was time now.
There's time. And
it's really depressing but beautiful at the same time.
Yeah,
it's like,
this guy's a dick. So.
Yeah, he's not a great person, but you also are like, I mean, that just
literally the one thing he wanted. Like
he just wants to read.
Like this dude, like everyone's dead, and the first thing this dude thinks is, I can finally read books.
Yeah.
Like in peace. Like dude has like 2 days probably left to live, and he's like, I'm gonna spend them reading books.
I know.
Like, let him read.
Yeah.
Powers that be. So that's one of my favorites. It's a fun episode.
Yeah.
Next is
Hyde's
pick.
I had a lot of trouble like figuring out which I would probably choose as a favorite, and there's so many other ones that might be my favorite, and obviously the famous ones that people know of. But one I think that's really nice is Nothing in the Dark. It's in season 3, episode 16. Glass Cooper and Robert Redford, and basically it's about The tagline is the synopsis: an old woman has fought with death 1,000 times and has always won, but now she finds herself afraid to let a wounded policeman in her door for fear he is Mr. Death. Is he? This is a really interesting episode. It's a very grounded episode. Some episodes of Twilight Zone are an hour. Some episodes are only 30 minutes. This is one of the 30-minute episodes. Mm-hmm. It is such a beautiful and very grounded episode. I don't want to spoil it because I know it's not as many people have seen it, mm-hmm. but it's a really good episode. It's on YouTube. It's on Netflix. I highly recommend checking it out. It's just a kind of short and sweet little story. So I think that's my favorite, just because it's very different from the whole rest of the catalog of Twilight Zone episodes.
Yeah, for sure. And Robert Redford's in it, so that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, Matt, which one did you pick?
Yeah, I chose I shot an arrow into the air. This is season 1, episode 15. This is it's like astronauts crash land on what they think is a deserted planet or asteroid or whatever, and they have this it's like a human tale of survival. You know, they kind of backstab and try to just survive. And then at the end, spoiler, I mean, this one is probably more well known, and it's not as big of a reveal, but they're on Earth all along. They're just in the desert, and so that kind of idea of this whole tale of people being the worst of humanity, and oh yeah, they didn't have to be. They were still on Earth.
It was their choice to be that way.
Yeah.
Kind of. There's other episodes that are like that too.
Yeah, it's a pretty common.
Yeah.
Kind of plot, I guess, more morality, I guess, but it's still it's a cool episode. I like mm-hmm. It's one of the originals of that type of story. So
for sure, cool. And so this show doesn't really have a Rotten Tomatoes rating. It's too old. As Hyde mentioned, it's very popular. Or I'm not sure if you mentioned it to us personally or on the show, but it's very popular on IMDb. It has a 9.0 out of 10 rating, which is pretty rare for a TV show to be that high. So if you've never watched the show, we do recommend it. It's not like jump scares. It's more like make you think, psychological type of scares. But it's not always scary. Sometimes it just kind of... I can't watch too many of these in a row. I can't do the marathons just because it kind of makes me depressed a little bit. Or just kind of feel sad because there's so many wrong people in the world, because they give these examples and yes, it's television, but there are people who are actually like that and think that way and treat others that way, like your episode, where they kind of always jump to the worst conclusion. So yeah, but that being said, it's a great show. As we mentioned, it's really well done, really original, and you'll watch episodes and you'll say, oh, that's like that movie, but I'll probably tell you that this show came first. So there you go. So let's rate the show as a whole.
Sure.
And then we'll do time travel after. So Hyde, why don't you start?
Okay. As a show, I mean, I'm going to give this a pretty high rating because, I mean, you can't give the Twilight Zone a high rating. What show can you give a high rating?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I will say Twilight Zone definitely has slight nostalgia goggles for some people in terms of it's kind of like the oldies your parents listened to on the radio. Like everyone's like, why are the oldies so good? Why are old music from the 60s and 70s so good? Well, because we've had 40, 50 years to filter out all the terrible songs.
Right.
And so kind of the same thing with Twilight Zone. Even though I would say about 80% of Twilight Zone episodes are very good and good to great to maybe even masterpieces, there is about a good 20% of them that are pretty bad. Mm-hmm. Most of them aren't usually written by Rod Serling, but there are some ones out there that are kind of oh, that was bad. Yeah. But, I mean, shoot. Everyone misses a few now and then.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But so I would give this show a 9.5 out of 10 because it's just about as good as you can get.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
Just, I haven't seen as much as I think you guys have. And, I think it's a really, really strong, great show. I don't think it's a perfect show. As you mentioned, there are some downsides. I don't think any show is a perfect show. But for me, I think just because some of it's a little bit heavy-handed sometimes for me, and some of it is kind of repetition. Some episodes are kind of identical to other episodes sometimes, and some of the time travel ones are really the same kind of theme. So had to dock a point for that, but 9 out of 10, still really strong. It is a really great show, and we do recommend it. And And if you guys have a favorite episode, let us know that too, because we want to know. But
Yeah.
you go ahead.
I agree with you guys. I'm with Jen on the 9 out of 10. I haven't seen a lot of them either. I think Heidi probably seen the most out of all three of us. But yeah, like not every episode's perfect, but the ones that are great are really great.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a whole, I'll settle at a 9 out of 10.
Cool. So time travel. So we didn't mention too much, but were there other examples you wanted to mention of how they use time travel?
Yeah, I'll go through quickly just because I know we don't want to be too long. But there is another one where like a rich guy goes back to his past as a child and ends up changing things for the worse for him.
Mm.
There's one where like a pilot ends up in the future because he ran away from a dogfight in the World War I and like realized in the future that the guy that he left survived, so that like gave him the courage to go back and fight, and that ended up saving the guy. So like he kind of learned what he should do from being in the future.
Okay.
Similar where a guy saves his kid from being in the future, and he got like medicine and learned some. Those are pretty similar. Yeah, and another one with like trying to stop the past, like the Lincoln assassination is another one. There's an episode, obviously time lapse, where a camera takes a picture of the future, and there's a couple other morality tales like. A cowboy is plucked from the past from being executed and ends up being killed, and then someone else gets punished. So
it seems like there's a lot of just, can you change the past or can you not change the past, and what is the result?
Yeah, that's pretty much the most of it. There is one that's kind of standalone, where the Odyssey of Flight 33, which is more just the flight that's being sent through time. I didn't see this one, but so I don't know if there's like a person we're following, but I think the flight, they go back to dinosaur times and try to go back to the present, but end up in the past. Like when they couldn't land because the technology wasn't there. And so there's no real morality, I think. They're just in the Twilight Zone having to experience these things.
Right.
And that episode, patches of that episode probably inspired the, I believe Stephen King, Lost, but even before that, The Langoliers, which was a kind of a horror sci-fi film where there's a made-for-TV movie that was done for it. But apparently, like, basically these people on a flight, stars David Morse, they end up in the past. But they end up in between the past and the present. So it's the dead zone, which gets eaten up by these creatures called the Langoliers. So they have to figure out a way, because nothing works. Like, food doesn't have any taste, gas doesn't work, flames can't ignite, because it's just like in this weird, like, time doesn't exist, nothing exists. So they have to figure out how to escape before they're eaten by these, like, things that eat the past, essentially.
That's cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So that being said, time travel rating, Hyde, what do you think?
Walking distance, this is a tough one because there's nothing really happens. So I'm giving it a low rating even though I love the episode. I'm going to give the time travel like a 3. I could give it lower because on the one hand, there's not really a lot of time travel. There's nothing distinct that happens. He's just in the past. You could also grade it. There's an argument to grade it higher too, I think. But I'm going to give it a 3 because it doesn't break its rules, even though it doesn't really establish rules. It's simple enough. Nothing happens that's like, wait, but how that happened, and this happened, and that happened. No, and so, yeah, 3.
Just for walking distance or like for the show?
For the whole show.
Yeah, you can combine
I'm
separate.
so sorry.
You're fine.
For the whole show, then, I will definitely give it like an 8 out of 10. I mean, even though most of their time travel episodes kind of follow similar themes, it's kind of good that it has a little consistency. It's kind of like almost like the thesis statement of the show about time travel. Like, don't do it. And if you can change the past, it will almost always turn out horribly for you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, 8 out of 10.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to give the time travel, I think, a 7 out of 10 for me. I like that there's different examples of it. It's not just one way to show it, and there is a little bit of duplication that we saw in Walking Distance, so I will give points there. But, yeah, I think overall, I would have, I guess if anything, and this is, granted I haven't seen all of the time travel episodes that this show does, but from what I have seen, I think it would have been cool if they kind of got into maybe more details about the time travel itself, or like how it came to be. I think would have been cool. Maybe not a whole episode on that, but versus just someone kind of appearing or disappearing somewhere. So yeah, 7 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, I'm right around there. I think, You know, yeah, I'll say I'll stick with 7 too. I was gonna go at 6, but then I was like, it's a Twilight Zone. You know, what I mean, it's like every scientific explanation. It's like, well, it's the Twilight Zone. It's this like other dimensional thing. So that obviously kind of elevates the but whatabouts that I would have for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the variety. I like that at least in the 2 episodes that we saw, there was differences. There was like you can't change it in this one, but this one you can change it. Like in No Time Like the Past, like that's how it happened, and we see how like if the way I believe it is that like he was always there and he always did it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But in the other one is like he changed it and he felt it immediately. So I like the variety, and as a whole, yeah, I think there's that's how the show kind of is. So yeah, 7 out of 10 for me as well.
Cool. Okay. So next episode is back to my pick, and we are doing something very current that we've been very excited about for a while. I know I've been very excited about this for a long time. We are going to do the new Wrinkle in Time movie. It will come out March 9th in theaters, so we will see it opening weekend and release the episode a week or two thereafter. So there you go.
Yeah, you have some time to see it in theaters too. So.
Yes. So I'm a big fan. I've read this book multiple times. I read it recently. I rewatched the shitty TV movie version with the guy from some ABC Family show from like 15 years ago. I don't.
I do.
You know who I'm talking about?
I do remember the David TV movie. I remember seeing it.
It's gonna bug me.
And
but
it's not good.
If you living under a rock and haven't heard about this movie, Oprah is in it, if that's not enough for you to want to see it. It's directed by Ava DuVernay, who I love and I'm really excited. The guy who I was thinking of from the TV movie version is this guy from Everwood.
Gregory Smith.
Everwood, that's the show I couldn't think of because I never watched it. So, Wrinkle in Time, go see it. Has a phenomenal cast. Reese Witherspoon, Mindy Kaling.
Chris Pine, Zach
Galifianakis,
Mugusu Gugu Ra, Mugusu Ra, something like that. Never say it.
That was all mumbles to me.
Yes,
she was in. She was actually in the new Beauty and the Beast too.
She was.
Oh, okay.
She was the
feather duster.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, it's gonna be great. I'm so excited. It looks amazing, fantastical, wonderful. Go see it if you're into it. But there is time travel in this story, so that's why we're covering it, and we can't wait. So, okay, cool. Social media, we are at Time Travel Trio on Twitter and on Instagram, and we are the Time Travel Trio podcast on Facebook. We're on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Stitcher. If you rate, subscribe, follow us on all of those, or on one of those, we would really appreciate it. If you write us a written review on iTunes, we will come up with a fake time travel story about you, your review, and or your name. So do that, because we love doing those. And if you have a favorite Twilight Zone episode, let us know. We'd love to hear some of your favorites so we can help others find cool episodes. Personal, I am at Jen Marlis on Twitter and on Instagram if you'd like to follow me.
I'm at Foreman in Space.
And I'm at Robinson is Hyde.
And
with that,
we are out of
time.